Welcome to Cryptic Horrors, where the shadows have stories to tell. Stay with me, because once you hear this tale, you'll never feel safe driving alone at night again. It was one of those nights where the darkness feels thicker, like the shadows themselves are alive. December in Alaska is unforgiving, and tonight was no exception. The thermometer in my truck read -26, but the chill in the air was deeper than that. It clung to my skin, slid under my nails, gnawed at my bones. I was running a late-night haul from Anchorage to Fairbanks, long stretches of icy road, trees bowed under the weight of heavy snow, and the occasional flicker of wildlife scuttling into the night. Out here, the highway feels like a different world, a cruel and desolate landscape where nature itself seems to whisper threats. The heater in the cab hummed weakly, struggling against the cold that seeped in through every tiny crevice. Coffee thermos clutched in one hand, I kept my eyes on the road, waiting for the radio to crackle to life. Other truckers usually kept me company, trading jokes, warnings about black ice, or just filling the silence with the kind of idle chatter that kept you sane. But tonight, the radio was dead. Just static and emptiness. It must have been around 2 a.m. when I saw him. A man standing by the side of the road, half illuminated by the glow of my headlights. He was waving his arms frantically, his whole body shaking. His skin looked pale, like it had been drained of all warmth, and the desperation in his eyes cut through the darkness. I'd heard the stories. Alaska was no stranger to madmen and drifters, people who'd lost their minds to the cold and the isolation. But there was something about this guy. Maybe it was the way his lips quivered, blue and cracked from the chill, or the way his eyes darted over his shoulder like he was being hunted. I slowed down and rolled down the passenger window just enough to speak. "Hey, you all right? Please, man, please let me in. My car, it slid off the road. I think I'm freezing." His voice was hoarse, like he'd been screaming. I hesitated. Everything in me screamed to keep driving, to leave him there and not look back. But the guilt of leaving someone to die in the Alaskan wilderness was worse than any horror I could imagine. So, against my better judgment, I unlocked the door. He practically tore it open, clambering inside and slamming it shut with trembling hands. The second he was in, the cab filled with this damp, metallic stench, like rust and something far worse. Thank you so much," he muttered between chattering teeth. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Where's your car?" Back there. It's off the road. I walked for, I don't even know how long. Thought I was done for." There was a darkness in his eyes, something raw and frantic. But I couldn't exactly throw him out into the cold. I cranked up the heat and started driving. "So, what were you doing out here?" He didn't answer at first. His fingers dug into the seat, white-knuckled and tense, trying to get away. "From what?" He glanced at me, and for a moment I saw pure terror reflected in his gaze. "From them. The ones that walk in the dark." My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. "What do you mean?" "They found me. They always do. They follow the sound of your breath, the heat of your blood. They want to drag you into the cold, into the darkness." I tried to laugh it off, but my voice came out strained. "You hit your head or something? Been out there too long?" No, I've seen them. Felt them. You can't outrun them. Not forever." The madness in his words was enough to make my skin crawl. But then I noticed his jacket. The dark, wet patches smeared across the fabric. "You're bleeding," I said, a lump forming in my throat. His gaze dropped to his chest. "It's not just blood." "What the hell does that mean?" His breathing grew shallow, his eyes wild and unfocused. "They touch you, and it's like the cold seeps into your soul. It tears pieces of you away, bit by bit, until there's nothing left but the darkness." I wanted to kick him out, throw him to the night and be done with his madness. But something about his words clung to me, sharp and icy. He suddenly lurched forward, grabbing my arm. His fingers were like ice. They're close. Can't you hear them? My gaze flicked to the mirrors, nothing but endless darkness stretching behind us. But then, the radio crackled to life, not with the usual static or friendly voices, but with a low, guttural whisper, a voice that didn't sound human. "We see you." I slammed my foot on the gas, my pulse thundering in my ears. The man beside me sobbed, his head jerking from side to side like he was searching for something that was already there. "They're here," he whimpered. "They found us." The truck's headlights pierced through the night, but the darkness around us seemed thicker, creeping closer. I could feel it, like cold hands brushing against my skin. Then he started to scream. Not words, just pure, unfiltered terror. His body twisted and convulsed, his eyes rolling back until only the whites showed. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" I shouted, but he couldn't hear me. He thrashed and clawed at the door, tearing his nails until blood streaked the handle. And then, just as suddenly as it started, he went limp. His body slumped against the window, lifeless. I pulled over, my entire body trembling. His eyes stared blankly ahead, but his lips were moving, whispering something over and over. "They're here, they're here, they're here." I looked into the rearview mirror, and for the briefest moment I saw them. Figures cloaked in darkness, their eyes like endless pits of hunger, faces stretched and twisted with torment. I slammed on the gas and drove. Didn't care where, just away. I never saw him again. But the whispers, the voices on the radio, they never stopped.